So I thought it would be great to get some heavy hitters to give us some take. So first up, I thought that, why not go to one of the best all-time professional gamers in the world, Johnathan Wendel, also known as Fatality. Come on.
Man.
If someone's going to give us if someone's going to give us an idea of esports being on ESPN, should
the original esports monster.
Come on. The man's been on ESPN himself. I wonder what would happen if you put him and Cowherd in the room. Knowing him, he probably still would say something, off cuff, just because, just to keep appearances. But, in this first clip, I just asked him, just about Cowherd's words, and the idea about esports being on ESPN and his thoughts.
Well, for me, I've been a big fan of watching ESPN for forever. I've been on SportsCenter. I've been on the top 10 of SportsCenter for playing video games before in the past. And, listening to someone talk about it this way, it's a very uneducated person about how competitive esports is around the world and how big it is. I guess for me, though, being a big fan of ESPN over all the years, ESPN for me is a television channel in the form of competition. So esports, basketball, NBA, NFL, spelling bees, fishing, bowling, all these things are competition. So for me, when I watch ESPN, I'm trying to see the best people at what they do and everything. Of course, they stick to the traditional sports of NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball and so on, but they do cover those odd sports like bowling and fishing and spelling bees. And, they've been diving into esports, which is a humongous demographic. Really is the sport of the 21st century.
Yeah, and this goes back to what you were saying, Joshua, that, it's the future. I had forgotten about the spelling bees part too. Are you going to make fun of the kids, for being up there? Even if they don't consider it a sport, they were on the channel, they're competing. Can you imagine the anxiety of being up there? I remember just doing a spelling bee in front of the school, and, I didn't make it outside of the school competition, but I remember my heart was pounding. So, are you going to attack that and saying, oh, these guys aren't competitors, they shouldn't even be up there? How far does it go?
I totally agree with what Fatality said. And to be honest, at the end of the day, the only thing that separates a pro in anything and a novice is just the amount of time and practice you put into it. People like Allen Iverson, Steph Curry, they are like living proof that you don't necessarily have to have the physical size to be in the NBA. I don't think anybody practices harder than Stephen Curry. From what I understand, he showed up to one camp one year, and he was the guy that was, an hour on the court before the court even started warming up, and he would be another hour, an hour afterwards, shooting 100 3-pointers and making sure all 100 went in. So work ethic, at the end of the day, work ethic is part of becoming a pro, and at the same time, the spirit of competition is within gaming. So ESPN obviously sees something with esports. They see competition and they see a market for it. So they won't be as naive as some of the employees that work there to dismiss the market entirely. Maybe the market wasn't there in the 90s or in the 80s, because the game wasn't there. But now that gaming and hardware have been able to produce some of the most competitive titles over the last 10 years, there's really no reason for them not to cover it. Esports is huge in the Eastern countries like China, Japan, Asia. Just all of Asia is huge. So that's a huge market to just go and say, no, we don't cover it because they don't throw a ball. You know, it would be foolish. You're hurting your own brand. You know, and their brand is the ultimate leader in sports. Well, it might as well just be rebranded into the ultimate leader in competition sports.
Yeah, exactly. And and that was the next thing that I asked Johnathan, about, the differences that, in just the idea of the athlete. It may not be always physical, but you have the mental aspect. And, I also asked him about, Colin Cowherd supposedly being forced to cover, such an event.
The hand-eye coordination and the reflexes that we do in the games are very similar to playing traditional sports. So when I play the games, I don't see any difference of me playing a sport and playing the game. The only thing is the physical exertion, but you still exert yourself in, stamina to compete and be, ready at any split second to make a move or to do a certain action in the game. There's no stoppage to time. It's not like, we're playing football and there's a break every 45 seconds or every 30 seconds. And the games I played, like first-person shooters, they were very fast. And, every second you had to be on your toes.
No disrespect to Mr. Cowherd, but if you're going to have someone covering esports, you're probably going to want to have someone that has the experience. I mean, he knows things like football, baseball, stuff like that. If you're going to be watching esports, you're going to want to have people that have played it, know what they're talking about covering it. Am I right?
Yeah, that's another thing. The esports community would never expect him to ever be the people to be the person covering it anyways. We would look at DJ Weed or Tasteless or Artosis or tons of other people that have dedicated their lives to reporting gaming news and gaming matches and play-by-play. I mean, even myself done color commentary. So I foresee myself in the future doing color commentary again for esports. So these are the things that, we have our people as well just as they have their people for their sports.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I just, even if he hadn't said any comments that were just wrong and ignorant, I just don't think that, you bring in someone like that to cover it. I mean, just in sports himself, it would be like, oh, I need someone to cover the Cavs, so I'm going to bring in someone who all their life has been covering, soccer. Why would you do that? You're going to piss off Cavs fans and basketball fans. It makes zero sense.
I agree. Like what I said earlier, I wouldn't want Colin Cowherd to cover anything unless he wanted to. And he would have to prove himself. How would he prove himself? By educating himself. But if he doesn't want to be a part of it, there's we're not twisting his arm, as far as, people that I'd like to see cast, I mean, there's limitless casters out there. I mean, you can go on to say right now, for example, the ESL brackets for the last Mortal Kombat tournament, the people who covered it were Godspeed and I think his name is Compton. Those guys cover the ESL weekly events, which, by the way, if you haven't checked those out, you should check them out because they're some of the highest production value I've seen for a fighting game tournament that's even hosted online. So I would check that out. MK Tom Brady is another one. Great fighting game player, even better commentator, though. His knowledge and his ability to dissect information that's going on in split seconds, second to none. You have James Chen and Ultra David, amazing casters, amazing, versatile in multiple games, old school and new. So these are all people that are willing to do the job amazingly, and we're not going to twist your arm. We don't need you. We don't need you. Sorry, boo. We don't need you. If you don't want it, you ain't going to get it.
Exactly. Now, when Colin Cowherd first made his comments on his radio show, Patrick Scott Patterson wrote an open letter to him, and it was a kind of response that, you wouldn't expect to come, from gamers, because you're used to gamers coming out with, like, attacks, with cursing, with bad words, with attacks on people's mama. No, this wasn't anything like that. This was intelligent, letting him know exactly how he felt. So, I mean, when I read it, I was like, okay, I have to get his take. I want him to, give us exactly how he felt, in his own words, so that you guys can hear it, in case you didn't read it. But you also should go read his open letter that he wrote to Mr. Cowherd. But, he was gracious enough to come on and talk with us about, what he wrote and how he felt about the situation.
Well, I think it was unprofessional, and I was very disappointed. I mean, I understand, in any walk of life, people are going to have, a difference of opinion. I respect that. I get that. But, to deny how much that's grown and the skill of the people, in esports and that sort of thing, especially when, I mean, for God's sakes, and I referred to this in the open letter I wrote to him. I mean, I've seen ESPN air spelling bees and hot dog eating contests and poker. And I'm not dismissing anybody that takes that stuff seriously and works hard. I'm sure that there's a lot of work to compete at a high level in those things. But, I would definitely argue for my seat that esports is more of a sports competition than any of those things are. And so I was disappointed that he went that way with it because, it was a big moment for all of us who love video gaming that did air. And, he overshadows that triumph by, dismissing it.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like you have someone who, has spent time training and about this, practicing, to get to a level. And you have people who spend hours and hours, days, weeks, months, years to get to this level. And, it doesn't matter if you're practicing, working out in the gym, playing a game, you're still putting in time, you're putting in work. You win this, and yeah, you're not listening to this guy. But still, it's still disrespectful to dump all over their accomplishments by saying what you've done doesn't deserve to be on my network. That's just wrong.
Last time I checked, it's not his network. He doesn't own it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I feel. If he wants to come out firing bullets, I'll fire bullets back. But my bullets have more meaning because you're just shutting down doors, and there's no reason for you to point fingers and try to dismiss something you don't understand. I have to go actually read that letter. I really want to read that letter. There's no necessity for people like him to try to stop or dismiss or discredit the hard work that a lot of people have put in. I mean, just this past weekend they did a showdown, Texas Showdown, for example, and one of the streamers there who does this, for little to no money, does it for the pure love of the games that are played and to cover the things, had his vehicle broken in. His vehicle was broken in. They stole $6,000 worth of equipment. Mind you, the equipment wasn't really the important factor. It was what was attached to the equipment. One of the hard drives they stole was a personal hard drive with videos of his kids actually being able to ride a bike, the first video of them riding bikes, baby pictures, etc. But what I'm getting at is people put a lot of effort into this and they don't get the rewards. There's no rewards. They're doing this out of the pure love of the sport, of the spirit of competition. So if they're willing to, unify under this, they're not hurting anybody. They're not out there looting, rioting, or anything like that. They're not out, causing problems. They're out, collectively together at an event that they pay money for to travel to and enjoy. I don't see the reason why you have to bash it. There's no necessity. So I feel like he does this out of fear instead of embracing it and being transitional towards the actual events that are happening and receptive.
Yeah, and the thing is, I speculated that perhaps what it could be is the radio equivalent of clickbait, where he already has the reputation of being like a jerk, and he's even said it many times. And most of the time, when you say I'm a jerk, either you're hoping to pretend that you're not, or you're embracing it and you're hoping to use that almost like a heel in wrestling. Yeah. And, I posed that, to Patrick Scott Patterson, saying, hey, do you think that maybe he's just trying to bring up the whole jock versus geek, jock versus nerd debate and use that, for ratings, to get people to call in, to get people to talk to him?
I don't think totally. I mean, I think that, I understand, there's certain things with that sort of a job that are done to get reaction. But at the same time, I don't believe that he, thinks that there's enough of an audience to get that type of reaction. I mean, I think that, to a certain extent, that is his honest feelings about it. And because, it's not like, it's not like that drew like Super Bowl numbers or something, I'm sure, for, I'm sure it got a decent rating or whatever, but it's not like that's something where someone's going to sit there in his position these days and be like, well, if I attack that, then I can get enough response to get a bunch of publicity. If he was only doing that, I think he'd attack an NFL team or, make remarks about LeBron or something like that. That's going to draw in more reaction. That's the type of stuff you do more for reaction. I think to some extent, he was speaking from the heart as to how gamers,
and he's protected by his wheelhouse, which is sports. He attacks LeBron or NFL, he can get suspended like Dan Le Batard.
Well, I think you have a point with that. I think that's a part of why gaming is often scapegoated for violent acts and certain other things like that, because I mean, the gaming communities are really willing to stand up and speak amongst each other about something like that. There's only a handful of us that go right up to the media and say, hey.
And I think that that's the thing, like with the Dan Le Batard incident, all he did was buy a billboard in Cleveland that said, you're welcome to LeBron, saying, that we in Miami helped him get his rings and he got suspended, and it's like if you attack someone who is huge like LeBron, you get suspended. But I mean, you attack gamers and stuff like that, who cares? You're allowed to do a lot to gamers because the common wisdom is, hey, we're going to keep buying games anyway. We'll complain, we'll yell, we'll bitch, we'll moan, but we're going to continue buying. So what does it matter what you say to us, about us, what you do to us? It's not going to matter. We'll complain, we'll post on message boards, but that's as far as we'll go.
Yeah, I think it has to do more with the collective than it does anything else. If, for example, I guess the best way to put it is in the local media market we have that down here, nobody likes Jeffrey Loria. Everybody hates him. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, the Marlins baseball owner. So maybe the best way to do it would be if everybody that did listen to the Colin Cowherds show was a gamer, all the gamers, they decided to just go, you know what? This other sports show is not too bad. I'm going to grab the dial and just tune it over to that sports show. Maybe he won't notice the difference. I don't know how many people like us listen to the Cowherds show, but every time I hear him on, guess what? Put him on Sirius XM because he's not on there. I'd rather not listen to him. The voice of a gamer, to them, is insignificant. It doesn't affect market value. It doesn't affect anything. If anything, what he did was try to kill time with coming up with some content, because maybe he didn't have content because, the mothballs, they were already all eaten, for crying out loud. So he probably ran out of content. He said, oh, you know what? A bunch of nerds are on ESPN 2. Let's make something out of this. Let's see what we can get. Maybe we get one of them to call in so angry that we'll have clips for the next couple times. Somebody says something stupid and they sound like this nerd, That's probably what he was aiming for, and I hope nobody gave it to him. I hope nobody gave it to him at all. And I hope they gave him was a lot of radio silence and just ignored him. You know, people like that, they're not looking for the open forum, you know, to create any type of change or progress or even create an exchange of information. They're just looking for ratings, you know. But the sad part is he's going to continue with the same ratings he has. And if he covered esports, he'd actually gain a couple more.
I gotta say, you kind of look like one of those whistleblowers in the shadows now. It looks awesome. And especially now you talk about Jeffrey Loya, so it's like,
oh yeah,
I want him to know who I am. It's like, shadow me out.
I don't want him to know who I am because guess what? I'm not going to your games. Because you made us pay for your stadium.
Even though there's, you know, the Marlins are winning now, there's not that many people going to their games. Sadly.
You know when Miami will care when the Marlins are winning? When it's the last game of the World Series. Then they'll show up with pots and pans.
Yeah, and everyone has Marlin jerseys, and it's like, oh, I've been a fan since, yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm a Giancarlo Stanton fan, and his $320 million. How can you be a fan of somebody who makes that much money? Holy Jesus! Can't be a fan of Yellow Star. That guy doesn't make as much as he does. Yellow Star's like me and you. He has more in common with us. He works. We're living the same wage.
Well, that was our pro take, and you know, thanks to our pros, Johnathan Fatality Wendel, and of course, Patrick Scott Patterson. Those were some great takes.